إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم اللهم إنا نوينا التعلم والتأليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وبسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء لوجه الله تعالى ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. With Allah's name and praise on Him and grace to Ahmed, I begin to learn and teach, to I intend, remind myself, reminding friends, availing all the folk who pass, avail myself and aid impart, encouraging that all hold fast to God's book and His Prophet's path, and calling men to guidance sure, and guiding men to goodness pure, His visage always seeking true, His pleasure and His nearness too. For the unending blessed reward of God on high, the gracious Lord, and so we end with praise on Him, our messenger, and all His kin. صلى الله على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. قال الإمام القطب الرباني إمام Abdullah ibn Alawi al-Haddad نفعنا الله به وبكم آمين وقدس الله سره ورضي عنه. Chapter 7 on acquiring knowledge. Dear beloved, you should have a wird of reading useful knowledge, which is that which increases your knowledge of the essence of God, His attributes, acts and favors, makes you aware of His commands and prohibitions, leads you to renounce the things of this world and wish only for the hereafter, and brings your faults, the defects in your acts, and the plots of your enemy to your notice. So, Imam al-Haddad here, in this section of the Book of Assistance, rather short but very powerful section, is continuing with his exploration of what he called the awrad, the regular wird that the seeker on the path of God should have. So if you look at the, it's the slide previously, right? So the diagram is kind of his overview of the awrad of ibadah that the believer should have, that the one striving on the path of Allah should have. A wird of salah, a wird of Quran, a wird of dhikr, a wird of contemplation, and a wird of ilm, of seeking knowledge. In the last couple of sessions that we've had, we've spoken about the wird of salah, the regular practice of salah, the 5 daily prayers, the additional prayers. We've spoken about tahajjud, or the night prayer, and we've also spoken about how to maximize the prayers you perform with intention, with multiplication of your intention. Then you have the wird of Quran that we spoke about last week, and we spoke about the importance of both recitation and contemplation. So today we're going to talk about the next of these awrad of ibadah. Okay? The awrad here means the time you should keep aside, that you should have a specific time each day or each week in order to complete this duty. And here we are talking about the duty of seeking knowledge. And he is talking here about beneficial knowledge, the regular seeking of beneficial knowledge. And the first question to address here, of course, is what is this beneficial knowledge? What is this ilmun nafi' that he is talking about? Now, at this point, stop and ask yourself, what do you consider to be beneficial knowledge? And I don't mean by that the knowledge that you know ought to be beneficial. I mean, what is the knowledge that you seek out? We are all engaged in a process of increasing our knowledge about stuff. When I was young, and I was mentioning this to my mum the other day, because she had, I think it was probably Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or something like that was on the TV. Yeah, and there was a question about the capital city of a particular place. Yeah, and I kind of went, oh, it's Montserrat, right? And she's like, how do you know that? And I said, well, when I was young, I really kind of gathered all this kind of trivial knowledge, right? What's the longest river on each continent? What's the highest mountain on each continent? All that kind of stuff. In the vague hope that maybe one day I would be on a game show and win lots of money. So I would read books of trivia, okay? I would read these trivia books, and still a lot of it rattling around in my head somewhere. You know, so you'll ask me a random question about the capital of Malaysia, and the capital city of Mongolia, and I'll say, oh, it's Ulaanbaatar. You know, I just randomly know this stuff, all right? And I sought out that knowledge, because at that time, I thought, this will possibly be useful at some point in my life. I remember when I started camping, I bought a book about kind of wilderness survival, right? And I read it from cover to cover, how to start a fire when it's wet, and how to build a shelter, and stuff about first aid. And I thought, well, you know, because I'm going to go camping, and this is going to be useful. And in England, it's pointless, because you're never more than about half an hour away from, you know, unless you're in sort of, you know, the wilds of Scotland, you're never more than half an hour away from civilization, right? When I got to South Africa, actually it was useful, because we went to the Drakensberg and stuff. I remember my friend and I went camping in the Drakensberg Mountains, and we were going up. We thought, oh, well, this is the route we'll take, and there's this cave that we can sleep in, you know, for the night, and it's all marked out on the map. And you know, we're two guys from England, mind you, right? So we kind of, you know, off we went, and about halfway up, we were getting a bit tired, and we saw a guy coming back. And he said, oh, you know, we got chatting. Oh, where are you going? Oh, we're going there. We're going this way. And he said, oh, so just be careful of one thing. He said, so just about, you know, half a mile up ahead, there is a mountain pass. It's about this wide, right? It's about this wide, right? And there's a sheer drop of about 1,000 feet here. There's no railing. So I can see you've got these big backpacks and your tent stuff. Just watch out as you're going down the path, because it's been raining and it's a bit slippy. But you'll be fine. Okay? Oh, and where are you spending the night? Oh, we're going to spend that cave. We're going to spend the night in that cave. He said, oh, you've got guns, right? What? No? You don't have guns? No? Why would we need guns? He said, oh, because that's Lesotho up there, which is a little mountain kingdom in the middle of South Africa. And he says, there are bandits, and they look for hikers. They wait for hikers to come and stay in that cave. So if you've got a gun, and you just kind of fire the gun, then they'll stay away. So and we kind of went, yeah, maybe we'll take a different route. Okay? But things like how to start a fire, they were relatively useful, actually, at that point. Okay? That book, which was produced in England, didn't tell you about having to keep a gun with you, and stuff like that. But what is the knowledge? We are surrounded by knowledge. Okay? You put on your social media, you go onto YouTube, and you are going to learn something about something. What are you learning about? Where do you spend your time, and what do you spend it on? And your YouTube algorithm will or your Facebook or whatever it is, your Instagram or TikTok, will basically tell you what you consider to be useful knowledge. Because that's the stuff that will come through on your feed. So ask yourself the question, what is the knowledge that you consider to be useful that you are seeking? Now, there's a lot of you here who are at school, university, and so forth. And the primary knowledge that you guys are seeking is maths and geography and history and preparing for your A-levels, preparing for your 11 plus, preparing for whatever it happens to be. Great, that's fine. That is knowledge that is useful for you in dunya. Right? It is useful for you in dunya. It is going to help you get a profession. It is going to help you gain a new skill. There are those of you who will be doing sort of CPD courses. You will be doing things to help you progress in your career. I'm going to go for this course. That's fine. These are things that you are willing to expend time and money on because they will help you in this world. There are those of you who become new parents, and you spend ages looking at, what's the ideal way to change a nappy, and health remedies and tips like this, of how to make sure that your child can, walk at the age of 6 months, and is speaking Mandarin at the age of 2 years old, and that kind of stuff, right? Pointless, by the way. But there are these sorts of things that we look for, and all of these things are beneficial to us in dunya, right? Genuinely beneficial. So there is knowledge that you are interested in but has no benefit to you. There is things that you have to know about and that are beneficial to you in this world. But what Imam al-Haddad is talking about is knowledge that is beneficial for you in the life that is to come. That stuff that I learned about camping, that stuff that I learned about how to pitch a tent in the thunderstorm, and all that kind of stuff, is that knowledge was useful to me when I was younger. Okay? I won't say the day I got married, but about a year after we got married, that knowledge became useless. Okay? It became completely useless because I was never going to go camping again. Not that sort of camping anyway. You can forget it. Okay? It was never going to happen again. Okay? And now, I've forgotten it. Like, why? Because it's no longer beneficial to me. The benefit of knowledge that you acquire, when you take it on the most broad spectrum possible, the benefit of the knowledge you acquire is the product of how much advantage it provides you in your life, multiplied by how long it will provide you with that advantage. That is why doing well in school, doing well at university, picking the right degree, picking the right career, these things are useful because they provide a lasting benefit. They used to anyway. Certainly, it used to be the case that a graduate over the course of a university graduate over the course of their lifetime would earn something like £100,000 more over the course of their life than someone who didn't have a degree. I'm not sure that is any longer the case. Okay? But you can see a long-term benefit. The knowledge that Imam al-Haddad is talking about is knowledge that will benefit you in the life that is eternal. And therefore there is nothing more precious than it. Okay? Now, I've said all that now. I'm not going to talk too much more about this because this is something about which we could spend a whole course on the importance of seeking knowledge. What knowledge? How much knowledge? In what order to acquire it? And so forth. Right? Course is like path to salvation. I've got some, alhamdulillah, we've got some original PTSs in the audience in the dhikr today. This is stuff, that course was set out to provide all the beneficial knowledge that you required and nothing else. No fat, pure lean meat, all the beneficial knowledge that you required that could be delivered to you 3 hours a week over 2 years. Okay? And I know that there are people who've studied PTS who up to this day will go back to their PTS notes. Right? If they're unsure about something, they'll go back to those PTS notes, they will read the notes, and it's there, it's right there for them. Knowledge that helps you in this world and in the next world. Okay? So this is what Imam al-Haddad is talking about. Okay? And what he says is very interesting. One thing he doesn't say at any point in this section is find a sheikh and sit and study at their feet. Not at any point in this section. Why? Because for him, that is a given. You don't need to know that. Why else would you be on the path of sacred knowledge or on the path of salvation in the akhirah if you didn't have a teacher? Okay? Here, he is talking about basically what you might call your own individual private study. You should have a wird of private study. What you read or you watch or what have you as bedtime reading, half an hour before you go to bed, that type of thing. And he says that beneficial knowledge is that which increases you in knowledge of God, His attributes, His acts, and the blessings that He provides. That teaches you the commands and prohibitions of Allah, which is fiqh, basically. So if you like, a broad version of theology, which is the knowledge of God, His attributes, and so forth. A broad description of fiqh, which is the commands and prohibitions of Allah. Then that brings about renunciation of the world and brings about a desire for the hereafter, which is the knowledge of taqwa. And then alerts you to your flaws, the errors in your actions, and I put this in inverted commas, the plots of your enemy. In other words, the knowledge of self. The ilmun nafs, the knowledge of yourself, your character traits and qualities, the hidden defects in your actions, or how those inward character issues impact on the way that you behave and the way that you act. And deeper than that, the way in which your nafs or shaitan, who is your enemy, is seeking to cause you to deviate, to cause you to harm yourself in this world and in the next, and harm others in this world and the next. And that is the knowledge of tasawwuf. So this is what he considers beneficial knowledge, the ilm al-akhirah. He then looks at the sources of such knowledge. And he says, this knowledge is present in the book, i.e. the Quran, the Sunnah, and the writings of the Imams. It was collected by Imam Ghazali in his highly valuable works. Those who have religious perspicacity, wisdom. Those who have a religious wisdom are well steeped in knowledge and have complete certitude. These people have great esteem for the works of Imam Ghazali. If you wish to travel the path and arrive at the levels of realization, you must make it a habit to read these books, i.e. the books of Ghazali. The works of Ghazali are unique among the writings of the correct Sufis in that they are comprehensive, explicit, and greatly effective within a short period of time. Okay? Understand, and I've mentioned this before, that the way of the people of Hadramaut, the way of the people of Yemen generally, is that they are the tariqah of Imam Ghazali. In many ways, they are the tariqah of Ghazali. If you want to know where is the tariqah that Ghazali left behind, look at the Ba'alawis. Okay, the Ba'alawis really are that tariqah. They really follow his way. Okay, and Imam al-Haddad, of course, was the foremost exponent of the way of the Ba'alawis, and therefore of Imam al-Ghazali. The Ihya is one of the few places in the world where the Ihya is taught from cover to cover, is in Hadramaut. Okay, so in Dar al-Mustafa, in Habib Umar's Zawiya / university, which is, by the way, for those interested in such things, one of the foremost centers of Shafi'i fiqh on the planet. So it's not just a happy clappy Sufi thing, right? They are some of the most senior Shafi'i scholars in the world, in Hadramaut. But they also teach the way of Imam Ghazali, and every afternoon at Asr time, there is a reading of the Ihya. And it just keeps on going. They finish it, they restart it. They finish it, they restart it. And just they read it with very little explanation, actually. Not like me, I give full-on commentary. They give very little explanation. It is a read-through of the Ihya that just continues going round and round and round. Okay? So these are people of Imam Ghazali, and hence his focus on the writings of Imam Ghazali. And yes, we teach the Ihya here, as you know, but Imam Ghazali has lots of very beneficial short works. Okay? And these are works you can read yourself. So, Ayyuhal Walad, right? Sometimes translated as Dear Beloved Son, or O Disciple. Sometimes Ayyuhal Walad is a very good work. You can read yourself. It's only about 50 or 60 pages long. It's not long at all. It's broken down into kind of these short letters that he wrote to actually a senior murid of his. And you can just read one section a night. It's very easy. Okay? There is Bidayatul Hidayah, the beginning of guidance, which is really a work on the Fardul Ain, which is also very useful and very helpful. And if you've studied done a basic study of the sciences of Islam, the Book of Assistance is the beginning of guidance is very, very good. But realistically, although Imam al-Haddad writes and really praises the works of Imam Ghazali, for private reading, you don't need to read the works of Imam Ghazali. All you need to do is read the Book of Assistance. The Book of Assistance really sums up all the relevant teachings of Imam Ghazali. And that's the reason that we're going through it here. That's the reason I've selected this book to go through. Because at the end of the day, my primary responsibility is to you guys. All right? And very few of you attend the Ihya. And those that do have probably forgotten more about the Ihya than they remember. And so we go through this work, section by section, so that you get the summary of Imam Ghazali's teachings, and we fulfill what he is talking about here, the works of Imam Ghazali. He then says, you should read extensively the books of hadith and tafsir, and those of the qawm, the people, here meaning the works of the Sufis in general. For this is where comprehensive openings and perfect travelling are to be found, as a Gnostic once said. Now, and interestingly, goes on to works that you should avoid. Oh, sorry, he also says the works of the Sufis. The works of the Sufis. And there are basically three types of works of the Sufis. Okay? The first are comprehensive works like the works of Ghazali and so forth. All right? As well as shorter works like the Book of Assistance and so forth. Works that combine the inward and the outward aspects of Islam together. Then the second type of the works of the Sufis are the works about the spiritual experiences of the Sufis. Right? And the most likely one of these that you have ever looked at or opened up would be the works of Rumi. Rumi's poetry. Okay? But the works that he speaks about are the works of Ibn Arabi. The works in which Ibn Arabi writes down basically his mukashafat, his spiritual experiences. Right? For those of you interested in such a thing, there is the best work of this kind is the diary or the autobiography of Ruzbihan Bakli. Ruzbihan Bakli was a 12th century Sufi who had just extraordinary spiritual experiences. Experiences of God, of the Prophet ﷺ, of the companions, of the awliya Allah, of heaven and hell, and he wrote them all down. Right? Extraordinary experiences. Okay? Imam al-Haddad said you should avoid these books. You should not read them. The third type of the works of the Sufis are the works about the Sufis. That is to say, the biographies of the great Sufis that have come before. The Poor Man's Book of Assistance by Sidi Ahmed Zarruq is an example of the first type of work. Very beneficial, right? But the problem is it gets a bit technical, right? But another example actually is, what is that book on the illnesses of the heart? Purification, is it called Purification of the Heart? Shaykh Hamza Yusuf translated it, right? Purification of the Heart is a very good work. Very good work as well, okay? So these are the types of works that you should read of the Sufis, all right? There are types of works that you probably shouldn't read, and then there are the biographies of the Sufis, all right? Which are extremely beneficial. So Farid ibn Attar, The Memorial of the Saints, Tazkiratul Awliya, other such works like that, and of course, Adventures with the Awliya, Ustad Noor's books, right? Which are honestly probably a bit misbadged, aimed at children. Okay? They can be read by adults as well. There is no age limit on those books, right? But they really teach you and they give you a lesson about those who came before you and give you encouragement about your own journey. Okay? Khair. So he then continues, you should be wary of whatever the treatises of the Sufis contain by way of obscure realities and obscure matters and bare realities. These are present in most of the writings of Shaykh Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, in a few of the treatises of Imam Ghazali as well. Shaykh Ahmad Zarruq said in his work, he gave a warning about such books, read it if you wish, but he did not mention the writings of Shaykh Abdul Karim al-Jili, who was a later Sufi scholar. His writings should also be avoided. Now this is interesting. Here you have a Sufi warning about reading the works of the Sufis, certain works of the Sufis. He does not say, however, these people were misguided. He doesn't say, he said, don't read the works. Not because they were misguided, but because the level of their guidance you aren't ready for. You're not ready for it. You don't have enough understanding yet. Okay? So he then says, should it be said, there is no harm in reading such books. I take that which I understand, I leave alone what I don't. I would say, you speak fairly. However, what we fear for you is that you think you understand, but you understand incorrectly, and you diverge from the straight path, as has happened to some of those who were assiduous readers of these books and ended up in heresy and disbelief. Talking about hulul, which is the divine incarnation in the human, ittihad, union with God. There is neither ability nor power save by Allah, the High, the Formidable. Now, very interesting warning, because half of his advice is a warning, right, where this is concerned. So first, this is just about that wird of knowledge. Okay? First, diagnose. Okay? Consider the areas of religious knowledge. Okay? Things like fiqh and theology, good character, hadith, Quran, and so forth. Rate your level of knowledge in each of them. You rate it like this. Do I have the minimum amount of knowledge that I require in this field? Or do I have less than that? Or do I have more than that? Those are the only three. Okay? Do I have the minimum, less than the minimum, or more than the minimum? Then consider the methods of study you have available to you. And I mean by that, yes, there's the zikr and there's the classes we do, but there's also the books that you have, the books that you might have on your shelf or are easily available to you. There's podcasts, there's, YouTube, there's, think of all the ways you get knowledge. Okay? Your parents, you might have an uncle in the family or something like that, whatever. Think about the methods available to you. Okay? Think about the access that you have to those things. Think about the time you have available. Think about any concerns about some of those sources of knowledge. All right? And then ask yourself, where are you currently getting your knowledge from? Is it reliable? Is that source a reliable source? Okay? And also, once you've got the knowledge, how do you preserve the knowledge? That's the diagnosis. Then you move on to the treatment, the actions. Have a plan to increase your knowledge systematically. Right? Systematically means first, all of those things that you are sub-minimum, that are necessary, bring them up to minimum. Some of the PTS students, some of you may remember the personal development plan. Do you guys remember? Personal development plan, do you remember that thing? I'm thinking it was after your time. We came up with this really pretty kind of blue, brown booklet. Anyone got that? The personal development plan for PTS. Zafar? You got that thing, yeah? You got it, right? And it broke down all the modules. Right? It had a page for each module. Have you studied it? When did you cover it? Have you done the exam? What did you? What are the basic things you learned from it? What else? What are the sources? Books you can read a bit more about it. What else do you need to know? What questions you have? It was like a personal development plan. Okay, for the whole of PTS that just allowed you to do this. But how do you bring everything up to minimum knowledge first? Okay, all right. So if you know that you don't really know much about the fiqh of salah, or perhaps your tajweed is not very good and your Quranic recitation is not very good, okay? But you're really, really interested in the YouTube video that's just come out about the errors of the Christians and how the Bible wasn't preserved, all right? What should you focus that 1 hour on? That 1 hour you've got available, what should you focus it on? Learning about the errors of the Bible, right? Or improving your tajweed a little bit. So this systematization allows you to improve everything up to that minimum standard. Like in tajweed, for example. What is the minimum standard of tajweed? Forget all the jazariya, all you fancy guys with your jazariya and your fazariya and all that kind of stuff. Forget all that. The basic minimum standard of tajweed is that you make each letter sound different. Right? The difference between a and a. The difference between ta and tha and ta. The difference between the and za and za. Between sa and sa. For example, these things, minimum, each letter sounds different. Okay? And you can learn that in half an hour. Seriously, half an hour. You just got to now apply it. Open up the Quran and apply it. That's what I mean by minimum. Half an hour to get that. Okay? So think about that. Think about your attendance. Think about your ilm al-hal. Ilm al-hal means what do I need to know? So there's two of our young people here today who've just got married. Their marriage was literally yesterday. MashaAllah. I'm not going to announce it properly now. We'll do it later, inshallah, with the Mubaraks and stuff. But these two people, the day before yesterday, did not need to know the adab of marriage. And everything that comes with it. But today, they need to know it. It's now fard for them to know it. Right? You start working, or you open your first bank account, it is now fard for you to understand the minimum about Islamic finance, about riba, what's permissible, what's impermissible, about zakat, and things like this. You didn't need to know it before, but you need to know it now. Okay? So what is your ilmul hal? In every aspect of your life, what do I need to know? How does Allah guide me on this aspect of my life? Right? All of us, for example, need to know the rights of parents, the rights of children. Because all of you have parents, and many of you have children. What are their rights? This is important. Okay? Etc., etc. So how do you do this? So attend classes. I don't just mean here classes where you can get them, but think about what classes. Right? Someone's doing a course tomorrow on, okay, I'm not going to say what I was going to say, but someone gives a class tomorrow on the signs that indicate that Imam Mahdi is around the corner and the Day of Judgment is coming. Right? Man, all you need to know from that class is the title. That's it. That's it. You don't do anything else other than the title on the poster. Right? Imam Mahdi is around the corner. The Day of Judgment is coming. Got it. Next. That's all you need to know. Why do you need to know how the hadith relates to it? As long as you've been reminded that the sands in your hourglass are coming to an end, maybe the sands in the world's hourglass are coming to an end, you've got everything you need to know now. Okay? That, or improving your tajweed. Or revising how to do wudu. Which is more important? Okay? And so forth. So think about this active learning and these sessions that you have. Think then about what you might call leisure knowledge. All right? Oh, I'm listening to a podcast. I listen to Joe Rogan. Okay? How nice for you. How many hours a day does that take you? 2 hours in a week maybe. You listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. Or probably Joe Rogan 3 hours a week. Right? What are you taking from that podcast? And what else could you be doing with that time? How do you spend that downtime of yours? And it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be a lesson. You don't even have to take any notes. Just learning something about the religion. Okay? And then accidental knowledge that we acquire all the time. And what do you do about that accidental knowledge? And how to detox when it's problematic. Okay? And lastly, ask if you're not sure. Especially, guys, about what's going on in here. Especially about what's going on in your head. Ask if you're not sure. A couple of you I've been talking to over the last couple of weeks who had really serious doubts, right? And you did and again, I'm not looking at anyone in particular, I'm going to look dead on at the camera. You asked, even though it was weird and uncomfortable and you thought I might be offended and, have a strop at you or something like that. You asked. And because you asked, it was all sorted. The problem can be sorted, nipped in the bud. Do not let things fester in your head. If you have a question, no matter how stupid you think the question is, ask. No matter how sure you are, if there's a 1% chance that you might have got it wrong, ask. Okay? Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said, Nisful ilm husnul su'al. Half of knowledge is asking good questions. Right? And good questions, man, it doesn't mean I'm going to really ask him a really difficult fatwa. Yeah, I'm going to really put him on the spot. I'm going to really put him through his paces. I remember once, many, many years ago, 2003, first time I met Shaykh Muhammad al-Yaqubi, 2003. And someone asked him a question, Shaykh, what is your position on such and such a thing, such and such a theological thing? I mean, take your pick, right? Such and such a theological thing. And he said, he reads out the question, and he says, I refuse to answer. I refuse to answer this question because the reason this person has asked me this question is because they want to test me. They want to know if I'm one of their guys or one of the other guys. Yeah? It is bad adab to ask a question to test the teacher, especially in public. Yeah? Because it means you don't trust the teacher. It means that depending on how he answers the question, I will consider whether I will then take benefit from the rest of his knowledge or not. Okay? So a good question is one that will help you on your road to God or remove one of the hindrances that shaitan puts in your path. That is a good question. So Allah make it easy for us, inshallah. And remember, this wird of knowledge, put simply, inshallah, here we try to provide for you everything that you need. All right? The reason I started teaching this work, all right, not long ago, you know that I would talk a lot in zikr and that kind of stuff, all right? The reason I started teaching this work, okay, and I'm being honest with you now, is that I realized that all of the things I was giving you in the zikr, right, for many of you, it was just washing over you, right? That it wasn't actually being of benefit to you. Although it was very interesting things about Surah Fatiha, 125 meditations on Surah Fatiha, and what is the meaning of the ba, and what is the relationship with the kaf and the noon, and all these kind of very nice, very beautiful, mashallah, right? Amazing things. But it's not helping you. This helps you. And that was on the basis of what? Reflection on my part, but me listening to advice that some of you gave me. Me listening to the advice that some of you gave me. Yeah, and you gave it to me in a very nice way, but it was very good advice. I have to listen as well. I have to take on board these things. Right? It is a two-way process. So as I consider, you consider. These action points, for example. Right? One of you said to me, really enjoying the class, don't you think it would be good if you gave us some action points at the end? Brilliant. There's the action points. Okay? Good. So have a wird of knowledge. And I leave you with that advice that I always give you. Whatever gathering you are in, especially these gatherings, write down 5 things that you've learned and taken away from any gathering of knowledge. 5 things. No more. Just 5. If you do that every time you come to a gathering, it takes not even 5 minutes. If you do that every time, your knowledge will accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. I guarantee you. Okay? People ask me, I was asked recently, how did you acquire so much knowledge and you know all these things and you studied all these things and yet you've never been to a Darul Uloom and you've never studied full time and you've never studied full time in the Arab world and blah, 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 all this type of stuff. How come? I said, because of consistency. An hour a week, sometimes 4 hours a week, sometimes 10 hours a week of studying in my spare time or driving in my car on the way to work, that sort of thing. But for 25 years. That's how. Allah make it easy, inshallah. Sallallahu ala sayyidina wa ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Birahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Inshallah. These sessions were meant to be 20 minutes long, weren't they? Anyway, there we go.